When I was growing up, my brother Peter played goal, and his favorite goalies were Jacques Plante and Bernie Perron of the Philadelphia Flyers. For me, I was a young kid, impressionable. And when the Canadiens won their first of four cups in 1976, I took a liking to a single goalie. That goalie, Ken Dryden. Hey gang, Kosta here from Puck Talk Montreal, and it's always sad when the Canadiens lose a legend, and there's no better word to describe Ken Dryden than legend, although you could find quite a few. Philanthropist, lawyer, author, all-star goaltender. The list goes on and on. I think the one thing that's questionable about Ken Dryden's life and career was that he decided to be the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs for a stint. That's not saying much, right? But overall, when you think Ken Dryden, you think of his ability to speak, eloquent, excellent use of prose, always with a proper way of saying things, no way to insult anybody, just matter of fact and accurate. And so a lot of people admired Ken Dryden because beyond the rink, he was intelligent, well-learned, and just a nice human being. And, a lot of times athletes aren't like that, right? Time and time again, we've seen athletes come and go that burst your bubble as far as, the type of people that they are, especially when they're your idols. But Dryden never did that. Back in 1964, Dryden was 16 years old. And he was drafted by the Boston Bruins. Think about that for a minute, okay? Drafted by the Bruins. And then the Bruins decided to trade him along with Alex Campbell. Yeah, I'm right about that. For Paul Reed and Guy Allen. Who? Who cares? The fact of the matter is that the Canadiens picked up Dryden. This was back in 1964, right? Just 6 teams, so not a lot of trade partners in the National Hockey League. And when Dryden finished his last year at Cornell, he joined the Montreal Canadiens in 1971. What did he do? Well, last 6 games of the regular season, he won all of them, going into the playoffs and helping the Montreal Canadiens win an unlikely Stanley Cup under coach Claude Ruel. Nobody expected that cup. Everybody thought that cup was going to go to Chicago. Didn't happen. They beat him in the final. 2 years later, at the end of the 73-74 season, after, that is, Dryden in 1972 won the Calder Trophy as the league's best rookie. A year later, Canadiens didn't make him a good offer. So what did Dryden do? Well, he did what I don't think anybody on the planet would do. He stepped away from the Canadiens, and he went to finish his law degree at McGill University. Huh? Well, you and I are going to sit here and say, who in their right mind would walk away from playing with the Montreal Canadiens? But that just tells you how smart and how different Ken Dryden was. He's a guy that walked by the beat of his own drum. He didn't particularly care what people thought. He loved the game of hockey, but he wasn't going to let the game of hockey dictate what he wanted to do. He never wanted to be away from the game. But, as luck would have it, the Canadiens' offer wasn't quite what he wanted, so he decided, you know what? I'm going to finish my law degree and go back to school. He went back for a year. And then the Canadiens smartened up, and he resigned. What did he do after that? He led them to 4 straight Stanley Cups from 76 to 79 before once again calling it quits, this time for good. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame shortly thereafter. And that was that. Now, for a young kid like me, who wasn't overly large, right? I'm only 5'9", Dryden was a giant. His life-size statue was erected at Place Vertu for the longest time when I was young. And I would stand close to it and think, my God, just who would be that person, right? How big is this thing? How big was Ken Dryden? Well, that's how big he was to a lot of people. In fact, that statue was moved to Place Montreal Trust in downtown Montreal, and now it's been moved back to the Raymond Bourque Arena in Ville-Saint-Laurent, where it's going to sit permanently after an art exhibit. And The arena is open to the public, so if you're ever in Montreal and you want to see that statue, it's something to look at. It's almost as beautiful as the goalie that stands in front of the Hockey Hall of Fame. But there was an 8-year career, 9 years altogether, with one going back to school. 8 years. 6 Stanley Cups. Who does that? Well, the Montreal Canadiens had a stacked deck back then, right? With the likes of Guy Lafleur, Peter and Frank Mahovlich, Yvan Cournoyer. The list goes on and on when you take a look at all the legends that played for the Canadiens back then. But Dryden was different. Just think, after your rookie season, you win the Calder Trophy. And what's the first thing that you're asked? Well, before the season starts, you're asked to be the starting goaltender for Team Canada in what was called the Summit Series between the Soviet Union, arguably the world's best hockey team, and a group of Canadian all-stars with the likes of Phil Esposito, Yvan Cournoyer, Dave Henderson. The list goes on and on. And what did he do? He helped the Canadian team, I should say, not to get it mixed up with the Montreal Canadiens, win the series in 8 games by a single goal. A penultimate achievement for Canadian hockey back then, and just a historic event. As historic as the Miracle on Ice was in 1980, where he was the color commentator along with Al Michaels to view the Miracle on Ice when Team USA beat the Soviets by a score of 3-2 in Lake Placid. Now, it wasn't a gold medal game by any stretch, but it was the game that led to the Team USA winning Olympic gold. So Dryden was involved in a lot of historic events. He was a cabinet minister in the Liberal government, I believe under John Turner, if I'm not mistaken. A best-selling author. His book, The Game, is considered to be the best hockey book ever written. And if you haven't read it, you're not a hockey fan. When they retired his number at the Bell Center, he came out to do a speech, not just in English, but in French, because he understood what bilingualism meant to this city. He embraced it. And one sentence was English, the next one was French. Why? Because he knew that people would understand both languages. And they appreciated him for it, English or French. It's an example of what should be done. Everybody in Quebec, whether you're Anglophone, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're Francophone, you should be able to communicate in both languages. But at the end of the day, you pick the one you want. If you want to speak French, speak French. You want to speak English, speak English. That's pretty much the message Ken Dryden gave in his speech. I want to speak both. I'm going to speak to my people in English. I'm going to speak to my people in French, because for 8 years, they were my family. He remained part of the Canadiens alumni, coming to events all the time, including the 100th anniversary, where for the last time we got to see him don the pads. Brown in color, made by Vaughn. Not exactly his type of pads, because he was never a butterfly goalie. In fact, little known fact that Ken Dryden decided to play goal because he had a hard time standing up on ice. You would see him quite often taking shots and lose his balance and fall. And he used to use the goalpost when he was younger to get himself back up again. But over time, of course, he learned how to skate better and better and better. And the thing about Ken Dryden wasn't so much as like he was your prototypical goalie who was good at everything, but he was just so big. He took up a lot of the net. His original set of pads came just over his knees. Then after he came back from Cornell, his pads were well above his knees because, of course, taking a puck on a knee hurts quite a bit, right? But Ken Dryden's legacy isn't going to be just what he did on the ice. It's going to be everything. His personality and how he treated other people with respect and dignity. With the fact that he was always humble despite his celebrity. And above all else, He was the prototype of what an athlete should be. Well-learned, humble, and just an all-around nice guy. So, Dryden's gone. Going quietly on his own, or surrounded by his family. Nobody knew he was stricken with cancer. He kept it to himself. A very private man to the end. Now, if the Canadiens are going to honor him somehow, we know they will. Whether it's having number 29 on the ice or wearing a black patch with the number 29, when you know they will, because Canadians always do it right. But until then, share your stories about Ken Dryden. Share what you loved about him. Share what you knew about him, because obviously a lot of you are younger, so you never really got the chance to watch him play, but you only heard about it and, maybe saw a YouTube video or two. But, leave your comments about Ken Dryden and the lasting legacy that he leaves behind.